Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful, swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Tuesday, June 13th, 2017. I'm just along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Tuesday evening, still getting a little cloudy out here. But it cooled down, which is all well and good. Nice and warm earlier. But that's the name of the game. Yeah, so I know people are... Well, I was walking by her this morning, looked at some of the lamestream news. Was talking about the whole Megyn Kelly interview with Alex Jones. And the notice, too, that J.P. Morgan took ads off of anything with Megyn Kelly's show. How obscene. Oh my goodness, it's so sensitive. He's speaking out. Oh, my feelings are so hurt. Please. Always observe responsibly. I haven't seen the interview, but I'm like, this is some of the gripes. The whole song and dance. And of course, people in the Senate were like trying to climax of grilling Jeff Sessions. Like, that's real important about the Russians. Yeah, right? Come on. More phantom smoke screens and all that good stuff. I don't have to repeat myself on it if you hear my show enough times. So, on the contrary, well, you're going to hear a train roaming by. The bells start to ring. Yep, there you go. It may take a little bit. That's all right. So, let's just check out what the Saudi arms deal. I remember everyone was addressing that about Donald Trump made that deal. And however, looks like the Senate disapproved it. We'll just check it out right here from Reason.com. Came out today by Ed Krajewski. And as it says here, Senate vote on Saudi arms deal fails, but momentum against Saudi alliance growing by a close margin than the last time. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, Chris Smith, Democrat from Connecticut, and Al Franken, Democrat from Minnesota, tried to block a Saudi arms deal. A vote to advance the resolution of disapproval of a $510 million U.S. deal to send precision-guided systems to Saudi Arabia failed in the Senate by a vote of 47 to 53. The resolution received more support than a similar resolution last year targeting a $1 billion tank deal with Saudi Arabia blocked by the Obama administration. The vote indicates support is growing to question the foreign policy establishment status quo. This even as President Trump is abandoning the challenges of the underlying assumptions of U.S. foreign policy and the U.S. entangling alliances he made during his campaign. Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, a main sponsor of the resolution, admitted to reporters today the vote was purely symbolic, noting that the House is unlikely to bring it up and that even if it passed, Trump would veto it anyway. I like that. How do we figure out to have less war? Paul asked reporters. That's the big question. I'm not willing to invade Saudi Arabia to tell them what to do, but we don't have to support them. Last year's resolution sponsored like this one by Paul, Chris Murphy, but Democrat from Connecticut, now Franken, Democrat from Minnesota, sought to disapprove the sales of Abrams tanks and others to Saudi Arabia. It failed by a vote of 71 to 21 to table the resolution. Paul called today's vote a continuation of the last one. We had a vote last year and we lost the vote, which I think is a good example of losing a vote by changing the policy, Paul told Reason. We lost the vote, but then Obama said, well, maybe we shouldn't give them special guided missiles, and then Trump has brought it back again. Paul predicted beforehand that there would be a lot more support from Democrats, and most Democrats support today's resolutions, which disapproved the sale of precision-guided munitions to Saudi Arabia for use in Yemen. The Obama administration expressed concern over the way Saudi Arabia was conducting its military operations in the Yemen civil war when barring the sale last year, while Senator Bob Corker, Republican from Tennessee, and other supporters of the arms deal argued the precision-guided systems would reduce civilians' death. Critics challenged that idea. What? Twilight Zone, Bizarro World, Senator Corker, what the hell are you talking about, you senseless fool? Saudi Arabia bombed a funeral procession, Paul said on the Senate floor, referring to an October 2016 incident. There was no mistake here. There was no cloud cover. There was no grow of tops of trees. And they accidentally bombed a funeral procession. They bombed them and killed 125 civilians in the funeral. They wounded 500. Right-wing groups expressed similar concerns. Despite increased U.S. support in the form of training and smarter weaponry to lessen civilian casualties, it has become clear that several unaddressed flaws in Saudi Arabia's targeting process, that the precision of the munition or targeting skills are the principal cause of harm. Read a letter signed by Oxfam and 40 other humanitarian groups and sent to every member of the U.S. Senate. According to the analysis released by the American Bar Association, resuming unconditional sales of these weapons to Saudi Arabia violates the Arms Export Control Act and the foreign assistance. The ABA found that the U.S. could not continue to rely on Saudi Arabia's assurance that will comply with international law and agreements concerning the use of U.S. origin equipment. Oxfam has warned that Yemen, embroiled in the 2-year civil war, is on the verge of famine, with nearly 7 million Yemenis facing starvation. We need to realize that we are part of it, Paul said, referring to the ongoing Saudi-led blockade of Yemen, which rights groups said is preventing food and humanitarian supplies from reaching the country. I am going to send one of my 3 sons to fight a war in Yemen. Paul asked, I have no idea what they're fighting for. As recently as September 2014, President Obama had pointed to the U.S. counterterrorism operations in Yemen as a model for the fight against ISIS and other counterterrorism campaigns. Instead, U.S. actions in Yemen increased popularity of the local Al-Qaeda affiliate and helped to destabilize the country. Much of President Trump's vaunted $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia remains vaporware, or as the Brookings Institution calls it, fake news. The deal Brookings senior fellow Bruce Riddell wrote consists of letters of interest or intent, but not contracts. On the campaign trail, Trump talked tough about Saudi Arabia at the point suggesting the Arab Kingdom was responsible for the terrorist attacks on 9/11. He questioned the one-way defense relationship and it called the world's largest funder of terrorism. Of course, we know how that thing goes, right? Status quo. I'll sell you a car. It's real crappy, but say it's in A1 condition. As President Trump made Saudi Arabia his first foreign trip, where he addressed Arab nations on the need to cooperate on fighting terrorism and toward a new counterterrorism center, Paul earlier today accused Saudi Arabia of polluting the world with his anger of radical Islamist terrorism. The Saudi arms deal, particularly in the context of Saudi intervention in the Yemen civil war, represents a further entanglement in regional politics, the kind that Trump, the candidate, said he'd avoid. The Senate efforts to scuttle a substantive, materialized chunk of the arms deal are a good start. Congressional pressure could thwart further progress on bringing the rest of the $110 billion arms deal to fruition. While President Trump has dropped his challenges to the foreign policy establishment status quo, seniors of both sides of the aisle, like Paul and Murphy, have an opportunity to pick up from the president and tap into the same popular wariness of the foreign policy status quo Trump did. Senators can challenge arms deals thanks to the Arms Export Control Act of 1976, which, as Paul explained to the press the last time around, allows senators to force a vote on arms sales by the president. Well, that is a fantastic report. I am very happy to read this because I was very critical about this whole arms deal with Saudi Arabia, and it looks like this part of it. The Senate is sent a big message. And so we'll just check out right here from the Business Insider. And how come? Oh, there it is. The Business Insider has to really make a statement on this also. And it says here, Senate votes 53-47 to defeat Saudi Arabia arms deal block by Warren Strobel, which is from Reuters. And it says here, the Trump administration notified Congress last week that it will soon plan to begin delivering precision-guided munitions to Saudi Arabia under a 2015 weapons deal. Congressional officials said on Tuesday. The Senate vote on 53-47 narrowly defeat legislation that sought to block portions of new separate arms sales to Saudi Arabia, agreed during a visit there by President Trump in May. Arms sales to Saudi have become increasingly contentious in the U.S. Congress, where some lawmakers object that American weapons have contributed to widespread civilian casualties in a Saudi-led military campaign in Yemen. Republican Trump predecessor Barack Obama, a Democrat, suspended the planned sale of the precision-guided munitions. There's a helicopter flying over me. In December, because of concerns over civilian casualties in Yemen, where the civil war pits Iran-allied Houthi rebels against the governments backed by Saudi-led Arab coalition. Senator Ben Cardin, the top Democrat of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said the administration had notified Congress about the start of deliveries on the 2015 sale. He said in the statement that Trump's decision was another reason for the Senate to disapprove the new sale. We need to send a message to the both Trump administration and the Saudis to work much harder to avoid civilian casualties, expedite humanitarian relief, and push for a peaceful end to the war through a negotiated political statement, Cardin said. Republicans control both chambers of Congress. A senior congressional aide speaking on condition of anonymity said the notification was received last Thursday. Decision to move ahead with delivery was first reported by Bloomberg. 2015 sale include more than 8,000 laser-guided bombs for the Royal Saudi Air Force. The package also includes more than 10,000 general-purpose bombs and more than 5,000 tail kits used to inexpensively convert dumb bombs into laser or GPS-guided weapons. Some weapons systems included in the sale were made by Raytheon Company and Boeing Company. The arms deal announced in May was for $110 billion, with options running as high as $350 billion over 10 years. Tuesday's Senate vote, which would block about $500 million of that sale, including a precision-guided munitions and other offensive weapons, coincides with Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and other officials in Washington. So that's good news on that. You gotta really put the hammer down with these people. And it's really good to hear because the truth of the matter is, my friends, people are tired of war, man. This is getting ridiculous, unacceptable. And why should we should be responsible for the deaths of innocent people by aiding and comforting them? And what really gets me is that Saudi Arabia's human rights violations are so deplorable, and we're still trying to be lovey-dovey, and now there's talks about President Trump wants to restrict ties to Cuba. If he uses the human rights, you ask them this: are you proud to have the Rosie O'Donnell, Michael Moore syndrome? Because what that means, being a effing hypocrite, that's when you gotta really let's see how he reacts to that. With maybe his toupee may stack up like he's seen a ghost. So yeah, I'm happy this occurred. You got to keep the pressure on there. Everyone's in there regardless. I don't care what your political views are. We don't want any more of these selling aid. Selling doing arms deals to countries that wants to use it on an offensive and oppressive matter. And here's a question people got to start asking the United States the United States President, Secretary of State. Hey, why do you want to support a nation that harbors tyrants? Great example, Ugandan General Idi Amin Dada, who was responsible for slaughtering 300,000 of his own people, mostly Christians, from 1971 to 1979, which is considered a hidden genocide. They all made a big thing about South Africa, but they forget about Uganda. Why? Because all is black on black, not black on white. We know how these clowns are. They always like this black-white thing. Anything that's interracial, they want to collide it, make you climax, and hate each other. Okay, so how come we got to support a country that harbors tyrants like him, which he's not around anymore, of course? Something to really think about and look at for sure. So that's enough I got to say about it. So I'm happy it got blocked. Thank you, Senator Rand Paul. I'm not a big fan of Chris Murphy or Al Franken, but you know what? I give them support. I thank them for voting on what's right. Voting against this for the right reason. All right. Well, speaking of free speech, there's like a couple things that are happening here about the Free Speech Act and all this stuff. And so we'll just bring it over. This is by Rutherford Institute by John W. Whitehead. Came out today. Go, lynching free speech, intolerant state of America. Short. My hometown, Charlottesville, Virginia, has become the latest poster child in a heated war of words and actions over racism, sanitizing history, extremism, both right and left, political correctness, hate speech, partisan politics, and a growing fear that violent words will end in violent actions. In Charlottesville, as so many parts of the country right now, the conflict is over how to reconcile the nation's checkered past, particularly as it relates to slavery, when the president needs to sanitize the environment of anything, words and images that might cause offense, especially if it's a Confederate flag or monument. Oh my goodness, run to the hills! In Charlottesville, the fear of offense prompted the city council to get rid of the statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee that has graced over its public park for 82 years. In doing so, they have attracted unwanted attention of the Ku Klux Klan. So, I wouldn't be surprised, my friends, if the Ku Klux Klan had federal agent-minded asswipes being hired to go there and protest. And I will tell you this, Robert E. Lee was against slavery, period. So why are you going to say he's a racist, which he was against slavery? Start doing your homework instead of hearing these bobbleheads. I will continue on here. With more than 1,000 Confederate monuments in 31 states and public parks, courthouse squares, and state capitals, not mention the Confederate battle flag on display in military cemeteries, and countless more buildings and parks named after historic figures who were slaveholders. This isn't an issue that's going away anytime soon. No matter how much we ignore it, shout over it, criminalize it, legalize it, adjudicate, or police it. The temperature is rising all across the nation, and not just over this Confederate issue. The winter of our discontent has given way to an overhead, sweltering summer in which shouting matches are skating dangerously close to becoming physical altercations. As journalist Delia Lithwick writes for Slate, these days people who used to feel free to shout and threaten are embodied to punch, body slam, and stab. It's a short hop. We are learning from words can never hurt to actual sticks and stones and the attendant breaking of bones. This is what has become a free speech in this country. Here's the thing. If Americans don't learn how to get along, at the very least, agreeing or disagreeing and respecting each other's rights to subscribe to beliefs and opinions that may be offensive, hateful, intolerant, or merely different, then we're going to soon find out we have no rights whatsoever to speak, assemble, disagree, protest, opt in, opt out, or forge our own path as individuals. The government will lock down the nation at the slightest provocation. It is ready, willing, and able to impose martial law within 24 hours. Indeed, the government has been anticipating and preparing for civil unrest for years now, as evidenced by the buildup of guns and tanks and militarized police and military training drills, the threat assessments and extremism reports, and surveillance systems, and private prisons, a la CCA and GEO Group. Connect the dots, people. Government doesn't care about you, about who you voted for in the presidential election, or whatever you think. The Civil War was over states' rights versus slavery. It doesn't care about your race or gender or religion or sexual orientation. When a police state cracks down, it will not discriminate. We'll all be muzzled together. We'll all be jailed together. We'll all be viewed as a collective enemy to be cataloged, conquered, and caged. Thus, the last thing we need to do is play into the government's hand by turning on one another and turning on one another and giving the government standing army an excuse to take over. The police state could not ask for a better citizenry than the ones that carry out its own ownership, spying, and policing. This is how you turn a nation of free people into extensions of omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent police state, and in the process turn a citizenry against each other. It is a brilliant ploy with the added bonus that while the citizenry remains focused and distrustful of each other, they are incapable of presenting a united front against the threats posed by the government and its cabal of constitution-destroying agencies and corporate partners. Hopefully you folks are really paying attention, okay? So, how do we stop this train from barreling down the tracks past police state into straight into martial law? Let's start with a little more patience, a lot more tolerance, a civics lesson on the First Amendment. This will mean opening the door to more speech, not less, even if that speech is offensive to some or dangerous in the eyes of the government. As I make it clear in my book, Battlefield America, The War on the American People, the U.S. government has become particularly intolerant of speech that challenges the government's power, reveals the government's corruption, exposes the government's lies, and encourages citizenry to push back against the government's many injustices. The powers that be understand that if the government can control speech, it can control thought, and in turn, it can control the minds of the citizenry. In fact, some of this past century's greatest dystopian authors warned of this very danger. In Ray Berry's Fahrenheit 451, reading is banned and books are burned in order to suppress dissenting ideas, while televised entertainment is used to antithesize the populace and render them easily pacified, distracted, and controlled. In Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, serious literature, scientific thinking, and experimentation are banned as subversive, while critical thinking is discouraged through the use of conditioning, social taboos, and inferior education. Likewise, expressions of individuality, independence, and morality are viewed as vulgar and abnormal. In George Orwell's 1984, Big Brother does away with all undesirable and unnecessary words and meanings, even going so far as to routinely rewrite history and punish thought crimes. And in almost every episode of Twilight Zone, Rob Sterling urged viewers to unlock their minds and free themselves from prejudice, hate, violence, and fear. We're developing a new citizenry, Sterling declared, one that will be very selective about cereals and automobiles, but won't be able to think. It is time to start thinking for ourselves again. It is time to start talking to each other. It is time to start listening more and shouting less. Most of all, it is time to start acting like people who will choose dangerous freedoms over peaceful slavery. And I can't say anything bad about that by any means. That is one fantastic commentary by Mr. Whitehead himself. So I'll always will pursue this dearly. So that's why we have to have free thought, freedom of conscience, including exercising our natural born rights, and freedom of speech is one of them. Okay? Just give you that example. You gotta go across the board on this. So, sorry about that. Wow. This is why you have to really look at everything into a bigger picture. Because if you don't, you will burn to the ground. All right? So, I'm just going to do something right here and get to it. So, we can get some here on Freedom of Conscience by Thomas Jefferson. Some of his great quotes. To compel a man to furnish contribution of money for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves and abhors is sinful and tyrannical. It is inconsistent with the spirit of our laws and constitutions to force tender consciences. Here's another one. But our rulers can have authority over such natural rights only as we have submitted to them. The rights of conscience was never submitted. We could not submit. We are answerable for them to God. That's in 1782. The freedom of opinion and the reasonable maintenance of it is not a crime and ought not to occasion injury. We are bound, you, I, and everyone, to make common cause, even with error itself, to maintain the common right of freedom of conscience. Here's four more here. Quotes. It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it with the case or others, or their case may change by change of circumstances become their own. It behooves them too, in his own case, to give no example of concession, betraying the common right of independent opinion by answering the questions of faith which the laws have between God and himself. There's another one here. This country, which has given to the world the example of physical liberty, owes it that of moral emancipation also. So, that is it. It's funny. So, there's like someone right here. The right of freedom of conscience is not guaranteed by the State of Alaska Constitution. Well, I say this. Would you say Constitution? Anything enumerated? That's freedom of conscience. You know what I'm saying? Let's check that out here. Let's see what they have to say about that. About the state of Alaska. So that's the whole thing, my friends. We're free-willed human beings, and they could never, ever take that away from you. All right? That is the fact. They cannot argue about it. They can say whatever they want, but you know what? It's null and void. You can make these decisions plain and simple. And like I said here, I hate when they use the civil rights thing. You know, it's like totally unacceptable. Ooh, sorry about that. Let's see what Declaration of Rights have to say in here in Alaska. Right here, Article 1, Section 1, this Constitution dedicated to the principle that all persons have a natural right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of rewards of their own industry, that all persons are equal and entitled to equal rights, opportunities, and protection under law, and that persons have corresponding obligations to the people, to the state. Well, they may not say freedom of conscience, but you know what? Inherited rights is right up there. Okay, so you can really see it for yourselves. I'm not going to add to the memo, but the Jefferson quotes, absolutely. And speaking of free speech, this is what's been happening in Wisconsin. This is from RT. It came out today, June 13th, and it's originally done by Reuters, Jim Workhart. As it says here, Wisconsin's Campus Free Speech Act risks stifling free speech, critics say. And it says here, Wisconsin legislation to protect free speech on college campuses would force state university systems to discipline students who disrupt speakers. Opponents warn that the bill will silence those who protest harmful speakers. Wisconsin State Representative Jesse Kremer, Republican from Kewaskum, or Scoom, introduced the Campus Free Speech Act last month that ensured that free speech is not only welcome but encouraged throughout Wisconsin academia. In recent decades, acts of free expression have been commonplace and in vogue at institutions where ideas and truths should be challenged. The American University, Kremer said in the statement, the most recent degradation has been at the behest of the leftist elite who promote their own progressive, opinionated beliefs as gospel while touting a bumper sticker slogan of coexist. And there's a thing on here by Jesse Kremer, of course, 2 weeks ago about the whole Campus Free Speech Act, which is AB 299. Moves to the full assembly for a vote that will bring our state another step closer to ensuring that free marketplace of ideas at universities are protected. Open debate and civil disclosure is a pillar of our democracy, with this free flow of knowledge of our societal freedoms will continue to thrive. So, something to look at. Campus Free Speech Act would require any student who engages in violent, abusive, indecent, profane, boisterous, obscene, unreasonable, loud, or other disorderly conduct that interferes with the free expression of others to attend disciplinary hearing. Any student that has more than one hearing will be suspended for at least one semester or expelled. The bill comes after free speech has become an issue on college campuses across the country in February. Protests at the University of California, Berkeley turned violent when Barbara editor Milo Yiannopoulos was invited to speak. In November, UW-Madison student also interrupted former Breitbart editor Ben Shapiro, who was speaking out against safe spaces on college campuses. Yeah, I think safe spaces are a sham anyway. It's for spoiled little brats, glam boys and glam girls. If you're too damn sensitive, don't even show up. All right? Pretty weak. And this is by Dana Campa, Badger Herald. Both sides are yelling at each other, shame versus decency. And there's a video for that. Audience members hold up papers outlining protest rules. Let's see what they have to say about this. check this out. After that protest, the Wisconsin Assembly. Yep, so they're talking about free speech matters. So that's very good. Yeah, I like that. Hey, good. Hey, good video. I like that. Great video. I like the crowd go. Free speech matters. There you go, man. Awesome. It says here after that protest, Wisconsin Assembly approved the Campus Free Speech Act with 8-6 vote, sending it to the Assembly floor. All Democrats voted against the bill, warning that was stifles free speech relating to the research and scientific pursuits of the facility. Democrats questioned the bill, its neutrality clause. Sorry about that. It's going to crack my back. Which states that universities must remain neutral and take no action on the public policy controversies of that day. During the committee hearing on May 11th, Representative Therese Burke, Democrat from Madison, questioned if the bill would allow a professor to correct a number of students that was arguing a biblical theory that the earth is 6,000 years old. The earth is 6,000 years old, Kremer stated, according to the Cap Times. That is a fact. Oh, really? But the Kremer said the bill stays out of the classroom, would only be intended for students who disrupt speakers. However, Kremer said that any student who felt they were unable to express their opinions in the class could bring their complaints to the Council of Free Expression, an oversight board created in the bill. The Council of Free Expression would submit an annual report to the Broad Board of Regents. Sorry about that. It's almost on here. Board of Regents. And, sorry about that. What the heck shoot. Board of Regents, the governor, and the chief clerk of each house of legislature, detailing any disruption to free expression that occurred throughout the institution. How we be taken seriously as an institution of higher learning and research if our professors can be called for a Council for Free Expression to defend their teaching of geology. Dave Vanis, Associate Professor of Population Health Sciences, according to the Cap Times. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, Republican from Rochester, one of the sponsors of the bill, said the biggest debate is going to be around the global warming. A lot of people think it is settled science, and an awful lot of people think it isn't. Voss said, according to the Cap Times, I think both sides should be brought to the campus and let the students decide. This is a video here. Antifa protests face off free speech rally in Boston. Yep. What everyone's doing there. Yeah, it's just fun. I'm like, watch. Yeah, it's funny because they're trying to use this whole thing on the whole Antifa stuff. But a lot of stuff is here. It's interesting. A lot of good videos. And I'll just finish it off right here. Voss wrote in a article in 2016 where he complained that a large number of guest speakers invited to speak at UW Milwaukee were easily identifiable as being liberal. He challenged the UW system to find more ways to ensure that all perspectives, including conservative ones, are present in the classroom. Many Democrats questioned whether the bill was necessary at all, since the UW system already has policies that deal with protests. State Representative Dana Wachs, Democrat from Eau Claire, called the bill a substantial overreach for a problem that frankly does not exist. Instead of supporting free speech for all students, the authors of this bill have created a broad, vague proposal that could chill speech and ultimately silence those who want to respectfully share their beliefs of an issue. Wachs says in a statement. So something to really look at, and I agree. Let these people have their discussions, their debates, and all that. And I just really find it disturbing. You try to chill, and gonna be all these things. People may get offended, but you know what? I could care less. One thing I tell people this: you should always have honorable discussions, plant the seeds, and learn from each other. Then you can start having a better dialogue instead of screaming and yelling and call yourselves asswipe, fascists, Nazis, commies, all that. Because to me, that's a waste of energy. That's just my take on it. However, if I'm critical and I blast people, yes, make sure you have merit, like I do. I was always trying to have everything back up with my facts, than just be a parrot. So I'm gonna take a little breather here and be back. Sorry, I just had to get a great laugh. I'm just watching some of these people doing these protesting, and when the gentleman doing interviews with them, they only have a leg to stand on. It's like, you know what? You're not organizers, people with that mindset. If you're going to be a bunch of posers, just go back in your closet with a bar of Palmolive soap, all right? And that's enough of that areas here. So, next one here just came out yesterday. It's Mass Private Eye, and they did a video. Actually, it was a short video by Caliber Press called Bulletproof. And as it reads here, in what can only be described as an obscene joke that's being played out in schools, churches, and police departments across the country, David Grossman, a former Army colonel, is teaching thousands about the psychology of killing. Cops fight violence, Grossman often says, what they do to fight with superior violence, righteous violence. When it became acceptable to let former military personnel teach law enforcement, churches, and schools to kill people? It will cost you $20 to $195 to attend one of his Killology presentations, where you hear Mr. Grossman tell the audience they shouldn't go out or looking at people killed, because those who need killing, the gangbangers, terrorists, and mass murderers, will come to them. All they need to do is be ready. Are you prepared to kill somebody? Grossman said. Police told that killing another human being will give them the best sex ever. In a class recorded for Do Not Resist, Grossman tells the students that the sex they have after they kill another human being will be the best sex of their lives. The room chuckles, but he's clearly serious. Both partners very invested in some of the very intense sex, he said. There is not a whole lot of perks that comes with this job. You find one, relax and enjoy it. Don't be afraid of getting sued. It's a chance for overtime, he said. But be afraid of getting successfully sued, Grossman warned. When cops aren't afraid to kill people and think being sued is just another way to make more money, then we become a police state. Why else are Blue Lives Matters popping up everywhere? Grossman claims his presentation are for any audience of caring people. A fact-filled presentation based on the most recent school safety research and offering vital response technologies for any audience of caring teachers, school officials, and parents. And this will let you know there are a lot of links on here so you can really read for yourself. Who wouldn't want a caring teacher that's not afraid to kill someone? Grossman is making thousands of dollars scaring religious organizations and schools into paying for a seminar and DVDs. He's appropriately named Sheepdog. DVD seminar costs $59.99, and his certificate course on killing and on combat costs $79. You can click here for more Sheepdog safety training products. Cops would feel strange, wonderful things, meeting abuse victims. Grossman coalesced his research into presentation affirming the life that all law enforcement military professionals have often chosen to lead, a cornerstone for professional training. If you might come into contact with impersonal violence, knowing what strange and wonderful things might happen to your body in these stressful situations. It is the first step of making the correct decision in the heat of the moment. After that, impersonal violence is really a euphemism for abuse. What cops or first responders doesn't feel strange and wonderful things after meeting abuse victims? Grossman's book are required reading for the FBI and law enforcement. An article in Mother Jones claims Grossman's Killology books are required that reading at the FBI Academy and many law enforcement academies. According to Craig Atkins, Grossman's training seminars are fear porn. Grossman is one of the more motivational speaker than a trainer, says Seth Stoughton, a former cop and law professor at the University of South Carolina, who studies the regulation of police. And according to an article in the New Republic, Grossman has taught tens of thousands of police officers, sheriff's deputies, and federal agents in every state to cultivate what he calls warrior mindset, being mentally prepared to kill any at moment. Grossman also claims to have taught hundreds of SWAT teams, training to think more like soldiers and to regard communities they severe as territory occupied by potential insurgents is the problem. We don't need more veterans who were trained to kill to become cops. American Law Enforcement Heroes Act gives prior for federal grants to state and local enforcement agencies that use funds to hire veterans. Fraternal Order of Police, the major county sheriff's association, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars all back the idea using the grants as incentives. God must be thrilled to have a church full of cops trained to kill. Grossman has also written 5 books about killing, but my favorite is Stop Teaching Our Kids to Kill. Using so-called war on terror to train law enforcement to kill people has to stop. It's time to stop the war on terror. And it has a real solid point because the whole thing is how many people they can arrest and how many people they can terminate when it's really unnecessary. Vigilance is essential. I'm not going to argue about that on any means. But based on what I've seen in this video and some of the links on here, I am not too fond of Mr. Grossman's rhetoric or teachings. The whole goal is to arrest many people as possible, sweep people under the rug. Shoot first, ask questions later. So I have to agree, this has to stop. Like I've been saying for 15 years, that people that know me during that time, even since my show, the war on terror is a conflict with the people. And this has to be terminated completely. Okay, so it says here, next one. Actually from Blacklist News, originally came from Anti-Media. Sessions is using opiate crisis as an excuse to disrupt medical marijuana. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has been vocal about his outright opposition to cannabis. Before and after becoming the nation's top cop, he expressed his ill-advised distaste for the plant, suggesting good people don't smoke marijuana, and bemoaning the possibility that cannabis shops could soon populate grocery stores around the country. Still, earlier this year, Politico reported that he privately told members of Congress that he would not be going after states with legal cannabis. This was surprising in the light of his past rhetoric, but though ultimately predictable considering Congress has been mounting protections for these users for years, and even more bills have been introduced in the legislature since President Trump and consequently Sessions took office. More recently, however, the Department of Justice has dug in its heels in regard to drug enforcement. In May, it announced it was seeking to extend mandatory minimum on drug crimes, a policy that has been proven disastrous in terms of bloating the prison population and straining resources, not to mention destroying nonviolent people's lives. How nice is that? I love you, big brother. I love you, government. You are my lords and saviors. Well, continue on here. Now, reports are emerging indicating that Sessions did not intend to go after medical marijuana after all. In a letter written by Sessions addressed to Congress, first obtained by cannabis-oriented outlet Mass Roots and verified independently by the Washington Post, Sessions urged Congress not to renew the 2014 Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, which prevents the DOJ from spending federal funds to interfere with state laws on the use, distribution, possession, or cultivation of medical cannabis. I believe it will be unwise for Congress to restrict discretion of the department to fund particular prosecutions, particularly in the midst of a historic drug epidemic and potentially long-term uptick in violent crime, he wrote in May to Democratic and Republican leaders in the House and Senate. The department must be in position to use all laws available to combat the transitional drug organizations and the dangerous drug traffickers who threaten American lives. The Post noted that in an email, John Huddock of the Brookings Institution characterized the letter's arguments as a scare tactic that could appeal to rank-and-file members or committee chairs in Congress in ways that they could threaten the future of this amendment. Sessions is incorrectly using the current opioid crisis to lump medical marijuana into his drug warrior stance. Studies show violent crime does not increase in areas where cannabis is legal. Medical marijuana may actually be correlated with decreases in homicide and assault. Further, rates of opiate abuse and overdose have been found to decrease when individuals have access to the plant. Nevertheless, as Massroots explains, Sessions, along with the Trump administration, is seeking to undermine the 3-year-old Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment when President Trump signed a fiscal year 2017 omnibus appropriations bill law until last month. He signed a statement that essentially reserved the right to ignore the medical marijuana protections. I will treat this provision consistently with my constitutional responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. The stance came in marked contrast to Trump's campaign claims that he supported letting states decide their policies on medical marijuana, but ultimately, unsurprisingly, the light of this decision to appoint Sessions to head of the DOJ. Mr. Sessions stands a threat of an overwhelming majority of Americans, and even, sadly, against veterans and other suffering Americans who we now know conclusively are helped dramatically by medical marijuana. Representative Dana Rohrabacher, who sponsored the amendment and has introduced similar legislation over the years, said in a statement, as the Brookings Institution, Huddock says, the letter should make everyone openly question whether candidate Trump's rhetoric and the White House words in support for medical marijuana was an actual to a lot to the American public of an issue the garners broad bipartisan support. 88% of the American public now supports legalizing medical cannabis, and an increasing proportion of the population supports legalizing the plant across the board. So, you still got to be on top. We still got to put their feet to the fire regardless and still exercise our 10th Amendment duties, especially of the whole anti-commandeering clause that actually, you could say, is a reflection of the Prince versus the United States. As a cornerstone case, it gets used multiple times. It has to be exercised. So to all the folks out there, just keep putting the pressure on them, keep the state servants on their toes, and let those bastards in Congress, including Jeff Sessions, know, hey, we decide, not you. You're not going to be our federalized nanny. Plain and simple. All right? All right, finally, this is really morose news. This come from the Fifth Column, fifthcolumnnews.com, came out yesterday. And this one here is by Justin King. U.S. immigration begins deporting Christians that face genocide. The United States has a mass deportation of Iraqi Christians. The Christians will be sent to an area with an active war zone. May have been told will be sent to Mosul, location with an active ISIS presence. They will be murdered if their religious affiliation is discovered. Earlier this month, House of Representatives passed a bill to aid Christians in Iraq who face genocide. It was obviously just a public relations stunt. There are widespread reports of Kurds being deported as well. Iraqi Christian population voted in favor of Trump during the last election because they were instructed to do by the religious leaders who presumably believe Trump's rhetoric about protecting the world from the evil of ISIS. Members of the congregation now face being beheaded because of Trump's fears of Arabs far outweighs his desire to aid Christians. If these deportations succeed, the United States will be complicit in the very genocide it claims it wants to stop. The reaction with the Chaldean Christian community of Iraq is one of the horror and disbelief. Many believe they are being delivered to ISIS to be murdered for propaganda purposes. The belief that videos of murdered Christians surfacing on YouTube will aid the U.S. effort to intervene in Syria and oust President Assad is common and probably true. Regardless of policy and politics, the people of the United States must stop these deportations immediately before you defend the president's action in this matter. Understand that lives hang in the balance. These people will die. If you ever wonder why the country has done nothing in the face of past genocides, now is your chance to prove that your character is different. Get on the phone, flood the White House, Congress, and ICE with calls demanding the United States to refuse to be complicit in genocide. Our country is headed down the road for which we can't turn back. If we do this, we might as well save the airfare and just line them up and shoot them ourselves. The diffusion of responsibility means nothing. If we put them on a plane, we're killing them. This is murder. This is genocide. Get off your ass today. Email, share, and tweet this article to your senators and representatives under the hashtag #NotOnMyWatch. Interesting motive, and I have to say, I do agree. One thing I really focus on when it comes to immigration, legal immigration, mainly, is criminal elements. Everyone has a right to be heard. And what's going on with this is I have to condemn it. Why? This is entrapping them and making excuses, possibly using them as pawns to overthrow the Syrian government. I don't like that at all. This is part of a one world order propaganda, and it has to be stopped. So all you folks in the United States, make this happen. So I got to get on the phone myself and make this happen also. And that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting and may want to know, whatever you do, please address us with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, and Patreon.com/Loki Luck III with 3 I's. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is the number 3, and it's all together at gmail.com. And for the encrypted supporters, Loki Luck numbers 03 all together at ProtonMail.com. All right, my friends. That is all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. May your guardian spirits be with you.